What is up, everyone? I'm Kimmi Chex. That guy right there is Adam Rank, and you are watching NFL Fantasy Bites. Adam Rank, happy week 11. How are you, my friend?
Oh my gosh, I'm wonderful. This is, it's getting very close to the fantasy playoff time, so everything, we're getting down to the nitty gritty. Every decision is going to be magnified. That's why I'm glad to be here with you today. We're going to be talking about our bites of the week, our favorite bounce back players, Club Dub! And you know what? I've been working on a little bit of a rant because I've got something that's, I'm a little angry about a couple of things. I'm not angry, but I've got a couple of issues that I want to address. But Kimmi, the most important thing is, though, how are you?
I am amazing. Speaking of fantasy playoffs, I have quite a few players going in tonight's TNF matchup. It's the Arizona Cardinals versus the Seattle Seahawks. Fun rival division game. There we go. English is hard today. Whatever. It's week 11. It's like we're in the slump of it. But it's going to be a really fun game against Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray. Tons of guys are going to go in terms of fantasy football. As a reminder, that game kicks off tonight. It's TNF 8:20 p.m. You can watch that on Amazon Prime, Fox, or the NFL Network. Now, I know we're going to get into that game a little bit later on in the show, but it's time for our bite of the week. So Adam Rank, kick us off.
Well, I'm going to start off with a rookie wide receiver. I have to say that very slow because I'll very easily say Wookie wide receiver. And even though I'm obviously a Star Wars fan, I don't need to be talking about Chewbacca. Instead, I'm going to be talking about Tee Higgins, who has been excellent so far this season. He's really helped take over this Cincinnati Bengals offense. And he has had at least 60 receiving yards in 6 consecutive games. That's the longest active streak in the NFL. And him and Tyler Boyd have just now pushed aside AJ Green. AJ Green's the old guy. He's like Saul in Ocean's 11. It's like, yeah, he's there. It's kind of a mentoring role, but he's not the key. I mean, he's still had a key component, but you know what I'm saying? This is now Tee Higgins' world, and we're all just living in it. He's got a tough matchup this week against the Washington football team. They've allowed the second fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this season. It's very tough, but you know what? I'm still starting Tee Higgins over guys like Travis Fulgham, Brandon Cooks, even maybe Amari Cooper. I also like him a little bit better than Tyler Boyd. I think that the production has been consistent enough that I'm going to be trusting Tee Higgins this week.
Ooh, I love it. I think we've both kind of bought into the Cincinnati Bengal offense, especially with Tee Higgins. We've hyped him up for weeks now. He was someone who kind of flew under the radar during the preseason. Now, speaking of rookies who flew under the radar in this preseason, there was a lot of hype about some rookies and if they were going to be fantasy relevant. Some have lived up to the hype, but some guys kind of flew under the radar and then emerged as incredible fantasy football players. So I want to take a look at this board because this is really fun. This is a different bite this week. I want to switch things up. If you were to draft the best fantasy rookie at each position, these would be the guys. Justin Herbert, currently the QB number 8. James Robinson, running back number 3. That's insane. Antonio Gibson, he's coming in 12th. Wide receiver Chase Claypool, 17th. Justin Jefferson, 18th. Tee Higgins, the guy we're just hyping up, he's 23rd. Tight end Harrison Brandt is 28th, and the kicker Tyler Bass for the Buffalo Bills, he is 2nd. So it's kind of interesting because I know I was really hyped on CEH during the preseason. I drafted him really early in the first round, but he didn't even make this top list. Instead, it was James Robinson and Antonio Gibson at the running back position. All right, now taking a look at this list, and you can go off menu if you want. Okay. Which rookie from this year should be drafted highest next year in terms of fantasy football?
Oh, I could go off menu and say Darnell Mooney or something like that. I'm not going to because the easiest answer for me is going to be James Robinson, who was really a find coming into this season. And I remember, when we started speculating who was going to be the guy who stepped up. Listen, I've got a lot of stuff wrong. You can bring back the 3-13 and everything like that. But James Robinson was a player that I identified. I go on KNBR where they lampooned me last year for picking the 49ers to go 3-13. They celebrate me because Mark Willard, I gave him James Robinson and he's winning his fantasy league because of it. And you think about what this Jacksonville team is going to look like next year. We anticipate them drafting a quarterback very high. They might end up with the top pick in the draft. We anticipate a new head coach, a new offensive system. But the thing that will still remain the same is that James Robinson is going to be their best offensive player. And he's going to be the guy that they lean on, especially if they have a rookie quarterback. And you think about what guys like Justin Herbert have done to their team this season. Well, imagine what a good rookie quarterback, somebody of that level or that caliber, what he could do for James Robinson. He might even be better next year. And you should start thinking about him being a top 5 pick, maybe even top 2 after Christian McCaffrey, maybe top 3 after Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara.
Ooh, that's spicy. A potential top 3 pick. I would assume that he would maybe go in the first round, but I didn't think that early on. A thing that I love about James Robinson that you kind of alluded to of him being so good as an offensive weapon, and he's not just a running back. He's also highly involved in the passing game. This season it's been kind of a down one for DJ Chark. We've seen Keelan Cole get a lot more involved in that offense as a wide receiver, but James Robinson has been good from the jump. So James Robinson, top 3 next year. No pressure. So finish out strong for these fantasy playoffs. If I had to pick a guy that was not James Robinson, because I do agree, I think that would be the number 1 choice, I'm going to go with the wide receiver. It was a guy that you just went and hyped up. It's Tee Higgins for me. I think you just kind of proved the point of why he's fantasy relevant and why he's really good. But you also have to look at that entire offense for the Cincinnati Bengals. They continually have to throw the ball to stay competitive in games, and Tee Higgins is the one on the receiving end of that. He's had 18-plus fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games, and he's had over 10 fantasy points in 7 straight. Plus, like you said, he's had 60-plus receiving yards in 6 straight games. That's the longest active streak in the NFL. I know Justin Jefferson and Chase Claypool are ranked above him right now in terms of fantasy football, but I think next season, Tee Higgins could usurp them. So if I had to pick a favorite rookie right now, I think it would be Tee Higgins. All right, it's time to move on, though. Last week, there were a lot of duds in fantasy football. Some star players who just didn't end up delivering. So let's put some of these guys in back-to-back debates on who is going to have a bigger bounce back week. You ready for this, Rank?
I'm ready.
Okay, it's bounce back time. Speaking of tonight's game against the Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks, who's going to have a bigger bounce back? Russell Wilson versus Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, or Deshaun Watson versus the Patriots?
Well, I would feel very confident starting either one of these quarterbacks this week. Russell Wilson, of course, is going to be my pick. Obviously, what happened against the Los Angeles Rams was not pretty. Probably cost a lot of us weeks. Not me, though. I still beat Tokyo Rose, my buddy, who tried to ruin me by auto-picking my team. But whatever, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about Russell Wilson going out there and putting it back together. This was a great matchup. We obviously saw these two teams play previously this season when Tyler Lockett had his 50-point game. He didn't even get DK Metcalf involved in that contest. So I really do believe that this week that they have something devised. This is the perfect opportunity for him to go out there, especially when you have a bad game. You don't want a full week of practice. You want to just get back out there and start throwing the rock. The good thing about Russell Wilson is that he's an amazing player. He doesn't need a full week of practice. He can show up on Thursday night, put up 30 points for you. So I really love Russell Wilson this week.
I agree. Plus, I feel like Russ is going to want a little revenge moment since he lost to Kyler Murray the last 2 times that these teams played. So I'm just a petty person in general. I have a little petty streak in me.
Of course.
So if I was Russell Wilson, I'd be like, you know what? You know what, Kyler Murray and Arizona Cardinals, I'm throwing for 500 yards and I'm going to put up 40-plus fantasy points. But hopefully his receivers eat tonight as well, because it's always a question. Is it going to be a Tyler Lockett game or a DK Metcalf game? I want both of those guys to be incredible. I think all 3 of them will put up some good numbers tonight.
DK was very close to getting into the end zone in the last game against the Cardinals. And he had that sick play where he tackled, was it Budda Baker from behind? So he should have gotten fantasy points for that. You know, like that should be something where you're like, you get fantasy points for that. But I expect DK Metcalf to be much better this week.
All right, let's do another head-to-head bounce-back competition. James Conner versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, or Mike Davis versus the Lions. As a reminder, Christian McCaffrey is not playing this week, so Mike Davis is the lead back for the Carolina Panthers. Which guy will have a bigger bounce back?
Well, I'm going to go with Mike Davis, and I think that this is a perfect opportunity for him to get back into our good graces after not quite, well, I mean, he was on, I mean, like Christian McCaffrey was back, so he wasn't around, but when Christian McCaffrey has not been on the field, he's averaged over 16 fantasy points per game. He was still pretty good while McCaffrey was there, but once he's the solo guy, obviously it just stands to reason that he's going to be a little bit better. He's going up against the Detroit Lions, who've allowed the most fantasy points to running backs this season. They've allowed the most touchdowns to running backs this season, 18 of them. So I really do like this as an opportunity for Mike Davis. And you know what? You got to wonder, you know, the bye week for the Carolina Panthers is week 13. Is this something that they're going to extend because I know the trade deadline is coming up, and I know a lot of people are deciding, what to do. If you have a good fantasy team and you have some depth, find the person that has Christian McCaffrey and see if they're frustrated enough to just deal him. And similarly, that's just kind of what I'm looking at right now. And so, just a little bonus nug there for you, Kim.
Ooh, look at you. You're a wealth of fantasy knowledge. You're giving people all of the nugs. And later on in the show, speaking of trade deadlines, we're going to have Michael F. Fantasy Florio come and give us some guys to trade for and trade away. So that's a good little nug. I also agree. I think it's going to be Mike Davis. I'm hoping he gets back in our good graces. We also saw what the Detroit Lions allowed last week when they played the Washington football team. Both J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson had huge games. So crossing our fingers that Mike Davis can do it this week. All right, one more bigger bounce back. Michael Thomas versus the Falcons, or Will Fuller versus the Patriots. I want to go first on this one because I'm fired up on this one. Why are people acting like Michael Thomas is not a good fantasy football player? I understand there's been drama. He's been hurt, yada, yada, yada. Michael Thomas was a wide receiver #1 back in 2019 in fantasy football. He's going to be able to do that again. There you see Drew Brees throwing them the ball. That's not going to happen. Drew Brees is out for the next few weeks because he got banged up in week 10, dealing with some rib injuries, collapsed lung, all that sad jazz. Praying for you, Drew Brees. That means Jameis Winston is going to start at quarterback. Back in 2019, when Jameis Winston was a starting quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he led the NFL in terms of passing yards per game. You think he's not going to be able to do that yet again this season against the Atlanta Falcons and that defense that has been abysmal, and that he's not going to want to feed Michael Thomas. If you think that that is a scenario, I'm done with you. Michael Thomas is going to have a huge bounce back game. I'm over the slander. I'm done. I'm fired up. I'm hyped up. Michael Thomas, huge bounce back game. I think he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver in terms of fantasy football. I feel like that was a Kimmi rant. I'm like mad. I'm like, stop with the Michael Thomas stuff. Stop it.
What Kimmi said goes double for me. Coming up next on Fantasy, but no, I agree with you with Michael Thomas. People are being ridiculous about it. And I think that this is another situation where over the next couple of days or the next couple of hours, if you can go out there and try to swing a deal for Michael Thomas with somebody who's very frustrated about him, I would absolutely go and do that. But I did want to take an opportunity right now to talk a little bit about Will Fuller, because I like him this week against the New England Patriots. And I know that Bill Belichick likes to go out and shut down the opposing team's best player. But the Houston Texans also have a former Patriot in the name of Brandon Cooks. And if Bill Belichick is as petty as I believe he is, it's going to be Cooks that is taken out of this game. Not that they're going to just let Will Fuller do whatever he wants, but he kind of does that anyways, because over the last 7 games, Fuller has scored at least 12 fantasy points in 6 of them. 5 of them, he had more than 15. So he's a very good player. They find ways to get the ball into his hands. Even last week, in that dumpster fire of a game against the Browns, where the weather was like Ice Planet Hoth, Will Fuller was modestly, like he was the only guy who was actually sort of playing on that whole team. Like nobody else was doing well for the Texans, but Will Fuller was at least out there doing something. So I feel very confident with him. But Kimmi, like don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong. Michael Thomas, bigger bounce. Michael Thomas, wide receiver 1 this week. I don't want to listen. I'm just telling you, but Will Fuller's also going to be good this week as well.
All right, both guys, hopefully huge bounce back weeks. That was fun. I like these little bounce back situations because, the one thing about fantasy football that's so funny is people get so mad at us when these guys can't perform. It's like, yes, we've watched the games and we understand the outcome. So yes, we just guessed wrong. Yeah, it was all our fault. So
I think, you know what they do? Like people act like we've watched the game ahead of time. Like we're movie critics. Like I've gone out and watched this game and I come back and report to you like, oh yeah, start Brandon Cooks and he does nothing. Like I didn't see this. This is unfolding in front of all of us. I can just give you my best projection. That's it. That's my PSA for the day.
That's your PSA. That's a mini rank rant. It's time for a very quick break, but coming up, we are less than 24 hours until the trade deadline. So Michael F. Florio will join us to talk about who needs to be on your radar and which players you need to deal away while you still can. Stay tuned. You're watching NFL Fantasy Bites. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Bites. It's no longer just myself and the bald dude, Michael F. Fantasy Florio, our favorite NFL researcher and analyst extraordinaire. You're here, you're rocking Floral again. How are you?
I'm good. I feel like I'm at the Comedy Store right now with Rank getting a little roasted.
Rank deserves to be roasted.
You were like, if you ever do go to the Comedy Store, don't wear that shirt. Because then these guys, the guys they'll never get into material. That's the one thing that I'm always afraid of. Like when you see somebody, like if you go to the Comedy Store in like, let's say a leopard print shirt, they would never let you hear the end of it. But I know that nobody on this panel would ever do such a thing. So we're all good.
Okay, guys, in the break, we were talking about the Comedy Store, and the very first and the only time I ever went there, I wore a cheetah leopard shirt, and I got roasted the entire time, and I left early because I was embarrassed, and it was very humbling. But let's just move past that. We don't need to dwell in my pain. As a reminder, the trade deadline for NFL.com standard leagues is tomorrow. We're less than 24 hours out, so that's why Florio is here. He's going to give us some top players to trade for and some guys to trade away. Florio, kick us off with your first guy.
Someone that I'm trying, if I don't have him on my team already in a league, I'm trying to get is Deandre Swift right now. He's heavily trending up, and the usage has been going up. But what I really like about him, as well as all of that, is the schedule. You see here the 6th best remaining RB fantasy schedule. He has the 8th best running back fantasy playoff schedule, and he just continues to get more and more involved each week. He's already has a very safe floor, giving you at least 11 fantasy points in 7 of his 9 games. But last week, they announced he was going to be the starter. He played a season high in snaps, touches, put up his best yardage, had a huge fantasy day. And some players that I think I would be looking to trade for Swift right now, who I've Swift as a top 10 running back this week, I would trade Kareem Hunt, Joe Mixon, Amari Cooper, Tyler Boyd, the Rams wide receivers. I know they may sound like some big names, but I would rather have Deandre Swift over all of them right now.
No, I really love that. And I know that we joke around and talk about the 30-touch Adrian Peterson game is looming, but Matt Patricia is a part of this Patriots coaching tree. And I know that everybody kind of gets upset with the Patriots, but there is really a method to their madness. And we've seen before, and it wasn't necessarily when Patricia was on the coaching staff, but when Sony Michel emerged a couple of years ago, they went with him. And I really do believe that now that Matt Patricia has found his running back, that he's going to lean on him for the rest of the season. This Lions team is probably going to make a run towards the playoffs. They're probably better than the Bears right now. So I think Deandre Swift is going to be a huge part of it. And we're probably going to benefit from the fact that he wasn't used a lot early in the season.
All right, another good rookie who's been fantasy relevant this season. All right, Florio, give me one other guy to trade for.
This is my guy, and I made a mistake for the first time ever this year. I was worried about him because the quarterback changed, but it's Keenan Allen, and the change then from Tyrod Taylor to Justin Herbert has been amazing for Keenan Allen. We know he has the talent. He's now getting all the opportunity. You see there, 29% target share this season, the second most in the NFL. That number actually jumps to 32% in games with Justin Herbert that Keenan Allen did not get hurt in. So that would lead the NFL. So he's getting more targets than any wide receivers on any given week. He has scored double-digit fantasy points in every single game with Justin Herbert. And the schedule is really opening up. He is the 6th best remaining wide receiver fantasy schedule and the 4th best playoff wide receiver schedule. So I think that he can really be a league winner. And I think it's easier right now for me to tell you the wide receivers I wouldn't trade for Keenan Allen. It is Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, and maybe Julio Jones, and that's it. So I'm really trying to get Keenan Allen on a lot of my rosters.
You know what? I want to start a fight right now. Would you rather have Keenan Allen or Michael Thomas?
I personally would rather have Keenan Allen right now, and I know that would have been wild to say coming into the year. I had Michael Thomas as my wide receiver 1, but Keenan Allen is just balling out right now.
I can see.
Sorry,
Kimmi. She's stewing. Sorry, I had to do it.
I'm done speaking to the both of you. You guys can finish the show without me. Okay, I'm kidding. That's fine. Keenan Allen has been productive. And you were right, the change at quarterback for Justin Herbert has been incredible. All right, those were 2 guys to trade for. Give me a guy to trade away, someone who may not be the best fantasy player in this playoff run.
This week, I mean, right now, someone I'm looking to trade is Todd Gurley. I get it. He's been productive for you. He's been scoring you a lot of touchdowns. And in fact, 40% of the fantasy points he has scored this season have come off of touchdowns. That number is just way too high. It is unsustainable. And if you look outside of the touchdowns, you're really not getting a whole lot out of Todd Gurley. He's given you fewer than 90 scrimmage yards in 8 of 9 games this season. He's only averaging 2.4 targets per game. That is 45th amongst running backs. And the players I'm trading for have good schedules. Todd Gurley has the opposite. He has the 3rd toughest remaining running back schedule and the 4th toughest running back fantasy playoff schedule. So I think with the touchdowns likely going to slow up a little bit and the really tough schedule up ahead, I'd be looking to trade him, and I would trade him straight up for Deandre Swift easily. I would also think about trading him for a couple of RB1s that are banged up right now, like Austin Eckler, Raheem Mostert, Chris Carson, and I would trade him for another rookie and Antonio Gibson as well.
Oh yeah, I love that idea. And he's got such a tough matchup this week. You know, he's a touchdown dependent running back going up against a team that doesn't give up a lot of touchdowns on the ground. The Saints have allowed 3 rushing touchdowns this season. They have not allowed one in the last month. So this will probably be the game that Gurley has 4 or something like that. But I think that the matchup is terrible. And I think that once you can move Todd Gurley, this is like when you have a car that you're getting ready to sell and you're like, I'm going to stop getting oil changes or rotating the tires or anything like that. You just need to get them off the lot right now.
All right, you guys, bring in the spice. We're dealing away Todd Gurley. It's crazy how some of these big name guys aren't the guys that could lead us to a fantasy championship. So it's time to get rid of them. As a reminder, 24 hours left in NFL.com standard leagues for the trade deadline. So listen to Michael F. Fantasy Florio's advice, and you can go ahead and bring home a fantasy championship. Florio, while we still have you here, I want to get to some fan questions. As a reminder, if you ever have questions, tweet us at NFL Fantasy, and maybe your question could get answered on the show. Hide them, fly in the tweets. Let's see what the people got today. All right, Nick wants to know, Jameis Winston versus, Jameis versus Newton versus Brady. Who should I start? So Jameis, Newton, Brady, Florio. Who should he start this week?
This is wild. We have a former MVP here. We have the GOAT here. But I'm throwing those guys aside. They both have pretty tough matchups this week. I'm going with Jameis Winston here. Winston has a great matchup. The Falcons allow the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. They're going to be in the dome, which always helps for fantasy. He has Michael Thomas and those great weapons around him, Kimmi. And he has Sean Payton calling the play. I think he is in just a perfect storm to have a really good fantasy week. And I have him almost inside my top 5 quarterbacks this week.
I like Jameis.
Do you agree?
Listen, I like Jameis Winston. I think it's fine, but I'm going to go with Cam Newton in this one. A guy who they just keep complaining about all the time. He's the Roman Reigns of the NFL, where people are just going to boo him and not sit and take a moment and observe how awesome he actually is. And he's been good this season. He's currently, the QB 15? Missed a couple of games, but that's fine. You know, he's battled through an illness, and now he is still out there producing. He got usurped on a touchdown pass last week, which is fine because he does it running all the time. But he's going up against the Houston Texans, and I think this is a really good matchup for him because they've allowed the most rushing yards per game this season. So I expect Cam Newton to have a monster game, and I would start him if I got him. Although I'm not afraid to start Jameis, don't get that wrong, but I would just have Cam a little bit ahead of him.
All right, but the consensus is to not start the GOAT Tom Brady. That's a little spicy. Let's do one more fan question while we have you here, Florio. Anthony wants to know, Ezekiel Elliott or Antonio Gibson? Florio, I'm going to start with you again.
Yeah, you want spicy. Zeke was a top 3, top 4 pick coming into every draft this year. He's Ezekiel Elliott. It has to be him, right? I'm going with Antonio Gibson, though. I think the rookie is playing really well right now. The Cowboys' O-line is still kind of in shambles, and Zeke has been really struggling ever since Dak has gone down. Gibson, on the other side, is just trending in the right direction. 2 touchdowns last week, over 20 fantasy points, and it's just a better matchup for him. The Bengals have allowed the 4th most rushing yards to running backs this year, so I think that this is once again a week where the football team will look to rely on their young runner and just let him run the ball a bunch.
I'm really curious about the construction of this roster. That you have Antonio Gibson and Zeke, which means you have another stud running back. Did you pick up James Robinson as well? So congratulations on putting together a great team and having an issue like this. Hopefully you can flex one of these guys. I know when you look at Ezekiel Elliott, And let me just say this about Zeke. I know that he hasn't scored double-digit points in 3 consecutive games. He has not scored a touchdown in, I believe, 4 games. And so it's looking bad for Zeke. It really is. But with Andy Dalton coming back, this Vikings team celebrating like they won the Super Bowl on Monday night, the Cowboys are not only going to win this game, but Ezekiel Elliott's going to have a good game as well. So I would want to start him. I would try to find, I don't know, tweet us back. I want to see this roster. I'm really impressed by you. I'm not going to be the guy who's like, oh, when he played in a 14. No, I get it. Like, you could have a team with a lot of good players. It happens. I would love to see it. I'd love to see your other choices.
All right, guys, that's all for our fan questions. Obviously, these guys with loads of opinions. Florio, every single week you write a column of sleepers. If you want to go check that out, go to NFL.com/Florio. But that's not the only thing you write. You also have a full list of rankings that you put out each and every week. Will you tell the people where they can go find it?
Yeah, you can head over to NFL.com/rankings. See that I have Jameis almost in the top 5. I have Swift and Gibson as top 10 running backs this week. So you can get all the rankings and everything you need to set your lineup this week. NFL.com/rankings.
Michael F. Florio, a man of the people. As always, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week on the show. It's time for a quick break. Still to come, it's our picks for who are going to shine when you need it the most, and the playoffs are on the line. Plus, which player got Adam Rank all fired up for his Rank Rant? You have to find out next. Stay tuned to NFL Fantasy Bites. Have a say in this year's Pro Bowl vote presented by Verizon. The Pro Bowl may look different this year, but the best players will still be recognized. So who showed out? Who brought the energy and the hustle? Who made the historic big plays? Show your love, cast your vote, and make sure that your favorite NFL players still earn their place on the 2021 Pro Bowl roster. Vote today at NFL.com/Pro Bowl vote. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Bites. I'm Kimmi Chex. That is Adam Rank. Is that what is this outfit? What are you doing?
What's up, fellow young people? Oh, it's Club Dub time. What up?
Is that what you would actually wear? Is that what you would actually wear to a club?
It's so sad that this is what I think club attire is. I have no idea. If you need me to show up at a golf course, I'll look like Bubba Watson. But otherwise, you want me to go to a club, this is what you get.
I love it. I mean, I would go to a club with you any day of the week, Adam Rank. I just don't know if I would stand next to you because I wouldn't be embarrassed.
That's fair.
But speaking of clubs, it is time for our Club Dub Players of the Week. These are the guys that we guarantee are going to bring you home more than 25 fantasy points. Adam Rank, bring us home with your pick.
I'm going to invite Chase Claypool. Let me get that again. I'm going to invite Chase Claypool to come down. People have been asking for us to yell Club Dub again, so I got messed up. I messed up Chase's name, and I apologize to him. But I really love his matchup this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's obviously been one of the top rookies this season. But as we took a deep dive into our own next-gen stats, and by the way, if you're not checking out next-gen stats, you're really missing out on some gold. So we know that Chase Claypool is great on go routes. He has 12 targets, 4 receptions, 183 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But the most impressive thing that we found looking at it last night was Claypool leads the NFL in receiving touchdowns on slant routes this season with 3. Only 3 wide receivers have multiple touchdowns on slant routes this year. It's him, DK Metcalf, ever heard of him? And Preston Williams, who is on IR, who is at least injured, who has 2, by the way. So he leads, we're talking about Claypool here, leads the NFL in targets on slant routes inside the opponent 12-yard line. So if you're disappointed with the production of James Conner because he's not getting into the end zone enough, it's because Chase Claypool is taking a lot of that production. He's not running sweeps like Bobby Trees, but he's running these slants and plays like that have gotten him into the end zone. That's why he's so dangerous. That's why I love him this week and moving forward for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right, Chase Claypool, welcome to Club Dub. You've got to bring home more than 25 fantasy points to officially be a member. No pressure, but the pressure is also on. I'm going to give you my Club Dub Player of the Week, but it's not just one. I'm going to hit you with 2 guys, and they just so happen to play tonight on Thursday Night Football. I'm going to go with Deandre Hopkins and Christian Kirk tonight against the Seattle Seahawks. First of all, DeAndre Hopkins, this should be no surprise. I know it may be dated now, but it should never be dated. DeAndre Hopkins is officially the jump man of the NFL from that crazy pass he had, or that crazy catch, he had last week to clinch and win that game. There it is. Oh, no, that wasn't it. That was just another pass from Kyler Murray. Whatever. Anyway,
this is it.
DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be incredible. He had over 100 receiving yards versus the Seahawks in Week 7. The reason why I like both him and Christian Kirk this week, though, is because the Seattle Seahawks are giving up the most receiving yards per game and the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers in NFL history. Not just in terms of fantasy football, but in NFL history. Christian Kirk, there he is running into the end zone. He's had 20-plus fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. He's also had 5 receiving touchdowns since Week 6. That's tied for second most amongst all wide receivers. So both of these guys, get them fired up and into your lineup tonight for that fun TNF game. Speaking of that TNF game, it's the Cardinals at the Seahawks tonight at 8:20 p.m. Eastern. You can watch that on the NFL Network, Fox, or stream it on Amazon Prime Video. Ton of fantasy guys are going to go, so I know everyone is going to be tuned in and watching. Rank, are you excited about this game tonight?
Oh my gosh, I'm really excited about this game, and I think that I'm always fearful because every time we think there's going to be a Thursday night game that's just going to have a cornucopia of points, it never quite works out that way, but I'm really confident that these two teams are going to make it happen. I'm so excited. You should be too. Start everybody that you can in this contest.
All right, speaking of excitement, I'm really excited for what's next. It's time for the Rank Rant of the week. The floor is completely yours. Please take it away.
Thank you so much. Justin Herbert shocked the football world this week when he shaved his head. And of course, being out here in Hollywood, we're no such strangers to such things, but typically it's Hollywood stars having epic meltdowns like Britney Spears, not a guy who is a leader in the clubhouse for being the rookie of the year this season. And a lot of you might think that he's just, wanting short hair. Maybe it's getting warm in Southern California or something like that. But no. I see this as a cry for help. And you might not see it that way. You're like, what are you talking about, Rank? He's the QB5 this season. He scores close to 24 fantasy points per game. He's had at least 20 in 7 out of his last 8, and he's probably going to do it again this week against the New York Jets. But he's crying out against the Chargers. The Chargers are the NFL version of Lucky Charms cereal. Cool packaging. The marshmallows are fine for a bit, but ultimately you leave disappointed. And that's exactly what the Chargers are. Cool uniforms. They're fun for the first half, but ultimately you are disappointed. You have one of the bright, young, rising stars in the NFL right now. You've won 1 game during his starts. I had to have this talk with the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know why you teams do not want to build around these stud quarterbacks. I'm a Bears fan. I don't know what it's like to have a great quarterback. This is the sad part of it. The 3 best Bears quarterbacks of my lifetime have been Jim McMahon, Jay Cutler, and Walter Payton on the halfback option. Mitch Trubisky's number 4. So I'm telling you, Chargers, what I told the Bengals. You better take care of this guy. This is why his hair looks like this. Listen to him. Win a game.
Are you done? Are you okay?
I think I'm good. I just needed to get that off my chest. There's been a lot of things happening.
I know he was getting flamed on social media for the bad haircut, and I feel bad, but come on, Justin Herbert. Maybe it really is a cry for help, because I don't know if that look is it, but who cares? No. Who cares what he looks like? We just care if he scores us fantasy points.
It's offensive to me as a bald man, too, that he would take such gorgeous hair and cut out. Like David Carr and I have legitimate heat because he won't grow his hair out because I'm trying to live vicariously through his locks, and he just won't do it. And it bothers me. But obviously this situation with the Chargers, it's bothersome as well.
All right, well, you can watch Justin Herbert and the Chargers this week. They play in terms of fantasy football and real football. If you don't have cable or if you're on the go like we always are, make sure that you go and you download the NFL Fantasy Football app. It's free, and the best part of it is that you can watch live games for free inside the app. You just open up. There's a little TV box right at the top right-hand corner. You click it. Boom, you can watch Justin Herbert and his new haircut.
Love it.
It's crazy. All right, Rank, tell people about the show we have on Sundays, because this is not the only time they get to hear us talk fantasy football.
No. You should be joining us on Sunday mornings for NFL Fantasy Game Day. We get you set up for the week ahead. We go through some of the top starts, some sleepers, break down some of the matchups, and get you ready to dominate your fantasy league on Sunday. So check us out. That's noon Eastern on the all-new NFL Fantasy app. You can watch us on Facebook if you're over 55. You can watch us on YouTube if you're a kid. Or, well, I don't know. They're like everything that social media does. I don't know. I'll bring back the guy who was wearing the white hat because he knew all the social media functions. By the way, I know you guys can't see this. My son's too. He walked in and he was like, I don't know if you heard him. He's like, Dad. And he looked and he saw me and he just was like, no. He just turned around. He's never done that. Just turned and walked out. But, please don't walk out on our show on Sunday morning. Can't wait to see you.
All right, I'm Kimmi Chex. That is Adam Rank. Thank you guys so much for joining us yet again. This is NFL Fantasy Bites. Good luck this week and happy teeing up.